It's cold out here and I feel lonely. I know the time can move so slowly. And in the distance I hear voices. Are they real or are they in my head? I'm lovesick. You got me lovesick. And I'm lovesick. You got me lovesick. And now I feel alive. Feel alive. Feel alive. Feel alive. And now I feel alive. So many times they try to change me, and every time it drives me crazy. And all the good times we had saved me. Are they real or are they in my head? I'm lovesick. You got me lovesick. And I'm lovesick. You got me lovesick. And now I feel alive. Feel alive. Feel alive. Feel alive. And now I feel alive.
Sunny skies grace a track perched on the bay of southwestern Florida, where a season starts anew at a street course for the very first time. It's a beautiful stage where today we welcome you to the season opener of the Season 16 Velocity Online Racing IndyCar Series and the first ever race of the year, the BooklyDoo Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Glad that you're with us on Velocity Online Racing, where alongside Ron Maunz and our producer Howie Burroughs, I am Kenneth. Bueno, Ron, this is the first time in the series history we start the year on a street course. This track not added not too long ago on the iRacing service. It's kind of brand new for the drivers, although it's the third time we're here. But again, starting it off at St. Pete, never done before, so it should be a challenge for everyone involved.
Yeah, maybe a new track for these drivers, but certainly not new in the world of IndyCar. It first held its first American open wheel race of any kind all the way back in the year 2003. At that point, it was a Champ Car event, became a part of the Indy Racing League 2 years later in 2005, which in fact was the very first road course in the history of that series. Since then, it's become a stalwart spot on the IndyCar schedule year in and year out. You see thrilling short track open wheel racing around this place. I'm really looking forward to it. This track is a bull ring in street course form. I'm really looking forward to it, man. I think this is going to be a real test for these drivers, a real test for everybody involved, including us in the broadcast booth trying to pin the tail on the donkey, but I'm really going to enjoy this. I think this is going to be a blast.
It's a rough track surface. It's kind of a new thing for plenty of the drivers. Only the third time that we're here at this St. Petersburg circuit, again added to iRacing just a few months ago on the service in the last build or so on iRacing, so it's going to be a lot of fun to see how these things all pan out. Of course, this is the first race of Season 16, so it's a brand new road to pave for all the drivers trying to get to the Season 16 VOR IndyCar Series Championship. We start here in Florida. We had a pair of races last season at St. Pete, only the first and only time we'll see this track in its racing form, and only 2 road courses on the season with a Barber doubleheader in October. So, Ron, how does that affect the mentality of the drivers? A relatively short season. Road courses, if they are the specialty for some, they're going to have to maximize it today and at Barber later on in the season.
Yeah, so definitely an added bit of importance on trying to get the lefts and the rights nailed down. Also, because of how spread apart this schedule is, can be a little bit tough for these drivers to try and stay with it mentally. I always focus on the mental side of things here in the broadcast booth, having done this broadcasting stuff for a while and having been a driver myself many, many moons ago back in the karting ranks. I know what it's like to try and stay with it mentally, to try and be the best you can. So keep an eye on that as we go throughout the season.
So we start this session with qualifying as the drivers are getting their way onto the track at St. Petersburg. Of course, they had a very long, near an hour practice session to get themselves sorted, familiar, and of course, just trying to get into the mentality of a brand new points-paying season and everyone taking the track. And our first of two groups of qualifying. So what you'll see in this qualifying format are groups that are separated in half. So all the drivers that registered will be split into whatever group they may. Fastest 3 drivers in each group will be put into the Fast 6 session, all using the primary tire for this initial group of qualifying and the alternate tire for the Fast 6 shootout. 3 minutes to try and put the best lap you can here at St. Petersburg, and there are a couple cars coming out of the track right now, starting with Julian Altena, the season runner-up from last year in the championship, of course trying to make sure he can get back to victory lane, a driver that won a pair of races back in season 15, and the main man behind this VOR IndyCar Series. And Ron, these first few laps of qualifying, of course, practice has been put in, but this is where you're starting to focus that idea on just being perfect around a track where Julian even said it earlier on in the session, track limit is the wall, so you really don't have a margin for error.
Yeah, and it's a track where perfection isn't really attainable. You just have to do the best that you possibly can, try and limit the mistakes as much as possible. We talked about the bumps. We talked about the turns. We have to talk about the change in track surfaces as you go around this place. It is less than 2 miles long, but in that period of time, you go from asphalt about as patchy as my face when I was 14 onto airport surfaces. It is a real tough racetrack to try and manage as you go throughout a lap, especially here in qualifying with that pressure laid on about as heavy as a tungsten blanket.
There's Altena coming across for the first lap and setting the first time in this qualifying session. Again, you do have these 7 or so minutes in order to put on your best time, so there is enough of a gap. There could be. Well, you got the 1 lap in this full minute, but all of these drivers in this main group, they're all separated, some of them coming out a little bit later than others, so they want to have at least enough time to put in a proper outlap and then get the railing start down runway 24, the Albert Whitted Airport. And one of the great things about this St. Petersburg circuit, Ron, is that it does grace a runway surface, so it's extremely, extremely rough on the tires, as Adam Williams finds it to be no problem. 101 flat for the 51, takes the top spot in Group 1.
That is a sickeningly fast lap time there for the rookie. Jumps up to the top here in this first group of qualifying to the tune of over 0.6 of a second. Certainly making an impression here very early in this qualifying session, but still plenty of time left for these drivers to try and stretch their legs out. Of course, practice does make perfect, but this is one of those racetracks where you've got to just stay with it all the time. You can't really rest on your laurels around this place at all.
Driver for Mono Competition, one of the few rookies in this series, and one of the main drivers in the chartered system. 19 of them attending this race here at St. Petersburg today. So all of them trying to get their laps in. Williams, so far, the best driver, and you look at the standings in the rookie class of season 16. Alexander Weitzel, Lucas Reed, Michael Techman, and Adam Williams, of course, a part of that. Still the fastest driver in this initial group. Everyone's still trying to get their bearings together as they rally through this back end of the circuit, and obviously tighter parts when you go through turns 9 and 10, the long sweeping straightaway on Bayshore Drive before eventually getting to the fast chicane, a quick right left in 11 and 12 before getting to 13 and 14, and that final hairpin. We'll see a lot of passes down there at the inside of the racetrack, but this group slowly coming to a close, all the drivers getting in their laps, and to get the onboard look with Christensen as he rides around trying to get the 44 car to the top spot.
Yeah, so as we look at Group 2 running out there on the racetrack right now, I want to give an extra little bit of flowers to Adam Williams, top of the qualifiers as it stands right now. This is a track that, despite being very tricky, a test for both veterans and rookies alike in real life, is one where rookies can exceed. I remember Robert Wickens in his IndyCar debut back in 2018, grabbing the pole and nearly winning on debut in what was a fantastic rookie season before it was ended as a result of his crash at Pocono later on that year. But it's a stunner of a racetrack, this. But as we look on board with Christensen and these Group 2 drivers trying to settle into a groove, this is a trial by fire to start off this season, having to hit your marks as quickly as you possibly can. Again, no room for error, no room for mistakes. You just have to get out there on the racetrack and gun it immediately.
And watching Group 2 going along, of course, the best 3 in each of these groups will get right into the Fast 6. So they'll start to shoot out on what is the alternate tires on these Dallara IR18. So a bit of a difference there, and that'll matter a ton when we get to the strategy part of the actual race, how you use the stints in the primary and red-walled alternate tires, where, of course, they'll give you a bit more pace over the first few laps, and then they'll start to wear out a lot sooner. It's always a fascinating part of the Speedway where you see tracks like these in St. Petersburg, and they give you a run for your money on how much of the tires you can use. There's Callum Ford and the driver of the 86 trying to take it around to the front straightaway, that runway 24. This is the runway used at the Albert Whitted Airport, mainly as this front straightaway here at St. Petersburg, and a hard braking right-hander going into turns 1, 2, and 3, where you're just dashing through all of these walls. Callum Ford, not a proper time left, a 1:12.927 in his last attempt, but this is the proper lap for the 86 car in group number 2.
Yeah, and he had a problem on that previous lap, heading down to turn 10. I believe he had a spin on the exit of the turn. That's turn 1, probably the hardest braking zone of the entirety of the lap. An inviting overtaking opportunity come time for the race, but it's not a slam dunk opportunity either. It's bad enough to try and nail that down by yourself, running single file, let alone side by side. Keeping an eye on Ford as he heads his way into the back half of the racetrack right now. Wrapping up the streets, heading back onto airport property. This looking like a much tidier lap here from Ford as he heads his way towards the final turn right about now. Let's see what he can set.
Comes across Callum Ford off of turn 14, trying to take it right to the outside wall, carrying down the front straightaway. Will it be enough to be close to the Fast 6? Sets the time at the line, a 1:04.332. Will not be enough to be one of those drivers in the Fast 6. Ford setting a 1:02 back in the practice session of this race. So here comes the Fast 6, all of them now slapping the red-walled alternate tires. Of course, will give you a bit more of that boost in terms of the grip on the short term. So everyone going out. Adam Williams was the top-seeded driver, the rookie, trying to capture the pole for the first time in season 16, while Adam Law, who won this race in the doubleheader last season, trying to make sure he can try another race win here at St. Pete and going across. And they're all going at the moment. Everyone trying to get around in the back half. This outlap run, very important to make sure you carry enough momentum into turn 14 and have enough speed down the main straightaway.
Yeah, keep the momentum rocking and rolling and get yourself back into the groove, both in terms, again, those tires and brakes up to temperature, but getting yourself in the zone to try and execute on one of these laps. These drivers do not have the benefit of time. They just need to get in their race car and go right away. Let's see who's going to do it. 2 rookies in this Fast 6 as well.
That's going to be very important for them, drivers who are trying to make the impression on the rest of the VOR IndyCar Series field. And Williams, Bittman already putting themselves in some of the best spots we've seen in this qualifying session, which has happened very quickly in the matter of a few minutes. This 10-minute session encompassing the first 2 groups and the Fast 6. So it does really go by in a very quick hurry. I'm on Law going through the first sector here at St. Petersburg, trying to make sure he carries through what is the tightest part of this track, turns 8, 9, and then you breathe out into turn 10 and turn 11, where you come to the faster parts of the street circuit, of course, trying to make sure you get every bit of the asphalt without getting the outside wall. And these large curbs, Ron, they can easily carry these IR18s into a quick spill or a trip into the barriers on either side of the racetrack, especially here through 13 and 14. Amal Law is going to carry it outside arc, trying to get as much speed off of the final corner. Can Amal Law put himself on the pole here in St. Petersburg, trying to line down the runway. His line, his lap, a 1:01.626 for Law. That seems to be the first time as everyone comes across to the front straightaway.
And not seeing too much improvement on the lap times for these drivers as we're waiting for some more to come across the stripe. I think as we're going into the afternoon, we may not be getting the quicker lap times.
And Williams in a big lap time, 1 minute 5:87 for the rookie. He just continues to impress in this qualifying session. And again, it's so different when you've seen the prior seasons of this VOR IndyCar Series come down to a lot of the season openers happening on ovals, or if they do happen on road courses, they don't happen here at these types of street circuits like a St. Petersburg, which again was added recently. So although it's been a staple in the IndyCar schedule for a long time, it's been the opening race for a proper IndyCar season in real life. It has not properly been one here in this VOR IndyCar Series, so they get to embrace much more of the IndyCar culture with this track. Checkered flag coming out for the last few drivers in the Fast Six. Adam Williams still at the top of it all, and the rest of the field coming across to try and beat that mark, a 1 minute 5:87. Altena very close, so 1 minute 7:22. But it may not be enough.
Yeah, I don't believe it will. What a lap time, though, from Williams. Able to cut down to a 00.2. That is stunning, even with track temperatures at 106 degrees Fahrenheit. I was worried about those track temps as we got throughout the session. Thought that those drivers wouldn't be able to improve, but what a run it was there. Drivers getting it in some very tricky conditions.
It was a 106 track temp that we're seeing here at St. Petersburg. So it is pretty blistering in the southwestern Florida sun. Of course, not to be surprised from these kinds of temperatures here in early August, and even in the sim time in Florida is still always relatively hot. But Adam Williams, the rookie charter driver, will be leading tonight's field in the BooklyDoo Grand Prix of St. Petersburg to kick off season 16. His lap, a 1 minute .265. The rookie stands out in qualifying with Julian Altena, the runner-up in the championship from last season, trying to get his first win of the year to start it off in a right way. The 11 car starts on the outside of row number 1 with a 1 minute .722. Roden F. Tink on the inside of row number 2 puts a lap in the Fast 6, good enough for third, with Dylan Bittman in the 93 on the outside, part of that Fast 6. Bittman in the 93 going to be on the outside in 4th position. Toby Deck and Amon Law, a big drop-off for the driver who won this race in the doubleheader last season. 13 will have to start from the outside of row number 3 in position number 6. So a pretty big drop-off from the 13 as the rest of the field comes around. Alexander Weitzel, one of the few rookie drivers in season 16, starts this one from inside row 4 with the 39 of James Watson on the outside in position number 8, and doubled up in the rest of this top 10. Andres Finche in the number 85 machine is inside in position number 9, and we looked on board with John Christensen through Group 1 and Group 2 of qualifying. The 44 starts in the top 10.
Matthias Strauss is going to be the first car outside of that top 10. He starts on the 6th row next to Pim Van Gastel there in the number 10 machine. Row number 7 is going to be seeing Sebastian Kinder start next to Luke Reed there in 13th and 14th spots, as 15th and 16th will go to Dan Ensch and Callum Ford on row number 8. Row number 9 here tonight, we'll see Brian Fiola start this race next to Katie Pollock, and then completing your top 20 here in tonight's race will be nobody. That is going to be it. So a slightly smaller field, just below 20 cars, but still looking forward to this race. It doesn't take a lot of race cars to put on a show here on the St. Pete Street Circuit.
Oh, this track is not too long, only sitting at about 1.8 miles and a little under 3 kilometers at these 14 turns. I mean, again, how tight and narrow this street circuit can be. It'll be plenty of opportunities for drivers to make passes in turns 13 and 14. Obviously, turn 1, a very big striking moment for drivers to take the inside, but could always be drama even if you have only 18 cars in this field. Tonight's race runs for 78 laps, 140 miles, and a little under 227 kilometers. It's a relatively long race, but it's 22 shy of the full race distance ran with the NTT IndyCar Series ran here earlier this year in March for the initial opener of the year. And the drivers will have to deal with plenty of things behind the wheel, of course. Those tire sets going to be very important, Ron. The alternates have to be used for 2 stints, primaries on 1. So how do you think that affects the mentality strategy-wise of those in the field when they know a street circuit as tough as this one going to be hard on those alternate tires?
Oh, it is going to be absolutely brutal, doubly so considering that the track temperatures haven't really gone down from qualifying, still at 103 degrees Fahrenheit. The tire game is going to be massively important and also a pretty big thorn in the side for these racers up and down the field trying to deal with it today.
Well, here we go. Rookie Adam Williams, best in the Fast Six, leading one of the most veteran drivers in the series, Julian Altenna. The field carries off. Turn 14, pace cars down. First ever time we're starting this season on a street course. Green flag in the BooklyDoo Grand Prix of St. Petersburg to turn 1. Adam Williams has the run, 3 wide for the lead. Altenna to the outside. Bittman trying to make a charge. And as they carry through the narrow turns 2, 3, then 4, it's the rookie in front.
Still smooth as we head our way through our opening turns, but there's trouble farther in the back of the pack. I saw half a front wing flying. Not sure who that was. It may have potentially been Ench on seeing him drop down the running order there. Currently running last of the pack, shotgun of the field down there in 18th. That wasn't even heading off into turn number 1. That was before they grabbed the green flag there. Very messy start in the back of the pack.
And Pittman tried to send it from the high side, trying to get the other drivers to flinch. What a rocketed start as they fanned out entering turn 1. Of course, that is a runway tarmac, so you can use all of that space to your advantage, but it narrows up very, very quickly at the entry of turn 1. So it's 1, 2, 3. Williams, Altenna, F-Tink, and then top 5, Bittman and Amon Law. Of course, started back in 6th place, trying to make up at least 1 or 2 in the opening sector. Everyone already single file. And already you can tell the different type of tire sets everyone uses. Now, the rule is you have to use the primary tires at least once in this race. As inside goes Bittman, attacking in turn 1, takes over 3rd for Motor F-Tink.
F-Tink was all crossed up as he headed his way down into turn number 1. That could have ended in tears for him. Now finds himself in the midst of a hornet's nest. Nearly going to see some battling as they head their way down through this fiddly section right towards the back half of the circuit. This is where the speeds are low, but the tension is high as these drivers try and make their way through this asphalt maze that they call a racing circuit. It's been a smooth start throughout the pack. The only driver running into trouble is Pollock, out of the race right now. Picked up a meatball flag. I believe it may have been an incident in the back half of the racetrack that's unfortunately caught them out.
And it looked like it was on lap number 1. There was trouble for Katie Pollock, and I did see some debris out there on the racing surface, but Pollock ended up in some deer kind of trouble, hitting the outside wall actually around turns 4, 5, and 6. So probably the tightest part of the racetrack where you can get in contact with other drivers. We've seen drama there. There is that blue Dallara IR18 for Pollock, so carries on. That's around turn 6. And going into turn 7, the car just straight line into the outside wall. Again, there are no safer barriers, but even then, it's a hard piece of contact for Pollock. A second look on board.
Yeah, trying to figure out exactly what happened here. Up on the curb, trying to get out of harm's way. I think there may have been some sort of hardware failure there. It did not look like that steering was cooperating at all. Potentially a loss of force feedback. That's rather disorienting whenever you're behind the wheel. Doubly so in these Indy cars with no force feedback. One of the strongest wheel feels in the entirety of iRacing in these cars. So whenever you lose a force feedback, it's like losing your sense of smell when going out to eat.
Yeah, it's a hard hit when you don't feel that anymore and you're kind of used to the sensation of trying to wrestle these cars. Again, the IR18s have no power steering, so replicated here on iRacing to try and be one of the most difficult cars to drive. Huge inside dive, turn 13, that's Toby Deck. One of the few drivers in the start of this race that has already burned off the first few sections of the push to pass. So of course these Indy cars added with the hybrid system as of most recently a innovation to the Indy car world over the last few years, and the push to pass that has been involved for a little while now. 200 seconds that you have available behind the wheel through the entire race, and you'll see the different mentalities. It's a strategy within a strategy, if you will, Ron, because you have to use it at different points in the race. Toby Deck, the only one in the top 5 to even get a sprinkle of the push to pass in, already using 8 seconds in the first 4.
IndyCar race strategy is almost like a lasagna in a way. There are so many layers to it. You've got the push to pass that you have to manage. 200 seconds for the entirety of this race. Can only burn 20 seconds in one single push. Got to manage that throughout the race with the worry of it maybe burning off a bit more fuel. Then that brings into the pit strategy. Of course, we mentioned the tires earlier. Got to bring up the fuel dilemma. This racetrack is rather stop-starty. Does have the prospect of doing a little bit of fuel saving, but you got to worry about losing time as well. Got to think about hybrid strategy as well. There's a lot of different things that these drivers are going to have to worry about. It is a multifaceted juggling game that these drivers have to play.
Just look at the replay entering turn 1, a large dive in the corner. Of course, that was Rotor Nefting giving a bit of space there in turn number 1, but Bittman able to get on by, and then Toby Deck, of course, making the move in the final corner on him on Law. Beautiful setup to the inside of the hairpin. That is, of course, one of the few passing opportunities. Oh, in trouble for Callum Ford. Driver ended up 2 laps down now. And, of course, we saw Katie Pollack involved in an incident there in turn 7. It looks like Ford just overcooked the brakes. Car did not want to turn and ended up right into the safer barrier again. That's the margin of error on these street circuits. They don't give you any sort of reprieve when you have a moment like that.
Yeah, heading into turn number 10, just locking it up. Again, a very heavy braking zone, but one that could very easily end in catastrophe. And unfortunately there for Ford, just going to be a hard deal and a hard hit heading into that wall. One point I do want to raise as we saw those replays, F-Tink hasn't gone off to the best of starts in this race, as now feeling some pressure right now in the battle for a 5th. That's Deck looking for it around the outside. F-Tink, one of those drivers starting off on the harder white sidewall tires, so keep an eye on that as we go throughout this race, trying to hold off the pressure on that harder rubber.
Yeah, we're already seeing the red-rolled alternate tire cars trying to make this move very early on, and they know they kind of have to out of necessity. They don't make these passes in the first few laps, so chances are those tires are going to wear down further. Those harder compound tires, 2 of them currently in the top 5, are going to last much longer. They're going to be much more interesting on performance, so you really do have to push this issue as we take a look at another incident there, entering turn. Well, that was right there, looking to the inside again. Wonderful passing from the outside. Toby Deck making sure he can put all the heat on Rotor Nefting and inviting a few others in the mix. Amon Law, Alexander Weitzel, the rookie driver back in the 5 machine running 7th. This is all single file cars, and all of them, for the most part, other than James Watson that's behind them on the primary tires. There's Bittman again on the charge for 2nd. Altena trying to play the defense, and Adam Williams' run has already pulled away. He is very much riding into the St. Petersburg sunset. 6.5 seconds clear of this battle for the runner-up spot.
Yeah, enjoying that clean view up in front of him and just being able to enter. He's locking in at the moment. That is what he is doing up there at the front of the pack. As everybody else farther behind, I wouldn't say it's in the midst of a hornet's nest, but it's definitely a little bit uncomfortable for some of these drivers. We ride on board with your 2nd placed rookie here in this race, running 3rd currently. It's Dylan Bittman in this 93 Honda, trying to apply that pressure onto Julian Altena. This could be a very interesting battle. We talked again about the disparity between the drivers on the primary tires versus the alternates. Right now, Altena running on the harder rubber, trying to withstand the pressure for it now with those hot track temperatures and the way this surface is. Those soft tires are going to fade away very, very quickly. So if Altena can hold out for a couple more laps, he may be in the clear to hold on to P2.
And just to give you a scope of the perspective of what the speed difference is like for a driver like Adam Williams, who's leading this race, is comfortable, doesn't have an inch of pressure on the back bumper or the back wheel of his IR18. Meanwhile, all these drivers in the running for 2nd on back, battling for position. A 102 flat set by Williams in his last lap, a 102.8 and a 102.798 for Altena and Bittman in the running for 2nd. So they're already bleeding much more time than the race leader is, just because of all the pressure they've had around them, all the traffic that's building up, and of course, the different types of strategies with the harder and softer compounds of tires. You take a look at Amon Law, the winner of this race in the doubleheader. And that was a very different perspective back then in Season 15. We're going to have a similar structure at Barber Motorsports Park later on in October of this year for Season 16. But this is the full-length race. There is no doubleheader talk. We had a pair of 18-lap races in the doubleheader last season here at St. Pete. But, of course, just a full 78-lap endurance race for the most part and a full-length feature here in Florida. So it is going to be a little bit different of an approach. And, Ron, I don't know how you would put that in the mind of a driver, whether you try to be a little more antsy behind the wheel and be eager to gain these positions, or whether that's the same early in this run. But how different does that play out for the mentality of a driver when you deal with 18 laps in a doubleheader sprint format, and then you're dealing with 78 where there is going to be at least a 2-stop, probably even less than that, but there is strategy involved in this one.
You know, it of course depends going from driver to driver and mentality to mentality. There are some racers that I think actually perform the calmest in those shorter races. Those are the fighter pilot types, the ones that can solve complex mathematical equations while juggling chainsaws. They know how to multitask. They know how to deal with one of these races. In a race of this length, though, for some racers like that, it gives them almost too much time to kind of overthink about the small little intricacies of this race. We talked about the complex strategy decisions that are going on for these drivers, trying to figure out what to do with the push to pass, the hybrid, everything to do with one of these races. So for some, I think they may enjoy this longer format. Others may find it a bit more stressy than a shorter race would. You'd usually think that the opposite would be true, but the mind of a motorsports driver is a very complex one, and for some, it's probably not a place they want to be. I speak as a driver myself. The mind of a racing driver can sometimes be a very scary place.
Well, yeah, it's also the discipline of if you have a short race, you're on 110% at all times. So you know what the mindset is going to be from lap number 1 to lap 18 is push, push, push. And when you have longer races like this, you have to balance that level of aggression, whether you want to push early, whether you want to be a little more conservative later. And you tell a race car driver to drive a little bit more slowly just to protect their car, and 9 times out of 10, they'll probably tell you, no, I want to drive the car at its full capacity, at my full potential. But knowing when you have a race as long as this and knowing the strategy that's already unfolded with those, especially on the alternate compound of tires, they have to be a little more careful with their cars or else they're going to burn it off very quickly. And this 3-car train that's starting up with Road and F-Tink in this back end of the top 5, all 3 in this group you're looking at on screen on the main primary white-walled compound Firestone Firehawks, these IR18. So they're going to be expected to be better on the long run as this race progresses. Only problem is they're all within at least a few car lengths of each other as we ride on board with Alexander Weitzel in the number 5, trying to chase down them all in law. Any given mistake from any one of these 3 opens that door and could easily invite others into the mix.
Yeah, and 3 rookies inside the top 10 at a very challenging track for the season opener. That is mightily impressive for all of those competitors. But talking about this 3-car fight, I gotta wonder at what the mindset is for F-Tink there in the number 18 machine, because we talked about the tire advantage that he had starting this race on those harder primary tires, trying to go for the long run here at the start of this race. But F-Tink found himself under an immense amount of pressure here at the very start, was pretty much having to cope with it like the windows on a submarine to get this race up and rolling. Lost 2 spots, has finally found the groove, but gotta wonder whether being under constant pressure, constant assault, having to be on some dirtier sections of the racetrack, I wonder if that's hurting as we have a now battle right behind that Law and Weitzel squabbling up.
And going into the deep sending turn number 4, and into turns 5, 6, and now 7 and 8. What a dive on the inside for Weitzel. Denied at the entryway by him on Law. And the 13 will hold on to 6 for just a little bit longer. Look at this run down the straightaway out of turn 3. Weitzel looked to the inside. Law with a defensive approach, trying to pinch him down. And near wheel-to-wheel contact between those 2, but Weitzel is not quite done yet. They're scurrying through 11, 12, now 13 and 14. Could this be another try from Weitzel down the inside? And he's denied once again. So they'll continue single file, but we know if you're the driver of the 13, definitely going to have to keep an eye from behind. This is already different from what we've seen in the prior St. Petersburg races, where again, there were 18 lap sprints, so a very different style and structure that the drivers were dealing with in season number 15. But the average start of the race winner was 12 and a half. 13th and 12 were the 2 winners in the doubleheader. They had to work their way up to the field. So far, it's been the Adam Williams show at the front of this field as again Weitzel charges. He's looking off to turn 3. That's the place he made the pass attempt last time by, and then through the tighter sections in 8 and 9, still not able to get close enough in the battle for 5th.
You know, tricky trying to find the spots where you know you have a really good shot of getting an overtake done. We saw it a little bit earlier on in the fight between Law and Weitzel, heading off into turn number 4, 5 through that very fiddly section right there in the back half of the track. I mentioned it through turn number 10 as being a good spot to maybe think about getting a move done. But just because you can go for a move doesn't mean you should try and go for a move there. It's a lot easier said than done to overtake in some of those sections of the racetrack. Adding in another little wrench into the works. I saw F-Tink was a little bit slow as he headed his way through that final turn. Thought we were maybe going to see a swapperoo hang down the start finish straight away. They kept it single file for now, but the tension is brewing in that fight.
Starting to get a little bit closer as we watch this battle for what is second place. This is Dylan Bittman. Remember, he had to get around Julian Altena in the battle for second. But once again, Julian Altena is one of those few runners at the front of this field on the primary wall Firestone Firehawk. So we should expect that pace to turn around for the driver of the 11. There was the descent of the inside. Oh, almost hitting the outside wall. Coming into 11 and 12, a daring move into turn 10. And it's Dylan Bimben making it 2 rookies at the front end of this field. Another look at the setup off of turn 10. Again, that is a really, really treacherous place to make a pass. Wall comes up quick. That's where we saw Ford get into the incident, into the barriers there on the right side. What a pass from Bimben.
Yeah, I think there was a fair amount of leading on the push to pass there, or at least on the hybrid deploy, heading down that little straightaway, the flat-out blast into turn 10. Again, going back to the point I was raising about getting a move done through that section. Takes 2 very talented racers to even attempt at going side-by-side through there, and certainly playing a little bit of ball there. That's understandable there for Altana, saying, you know what, you can get this move done. You can do whatever you want. I'm going to let you bind. I'm going to try and overtake you a little bit later on through strategy. That's exactly what he was probably thinking there at the time. You got to play ball in situations like that. If you fight for every single nook and cranny out there on the racetrack, eventually you're going to have somebody threaten to slash you with a sword for, one small position outside the top 10. That's not really matter. You got to pick and choose your fights when it comes to this track, as that's Amon Law losing it big time, heading down to turn number 4 and 5. Was talking about that battling, potentially getting a little bit too intense. I was waiting for something to snap. Unfortunately, that was the snap.
And he saw the run coming from back there, way off in the distance off turn number 3. Matthias Strauss also with a similar problem, and thankfully lots of runoff there in turn number 4. So if you find yourself locking up the brakes, you could just scurry off into the sunset and then make that arc around. Alexander Whitestone now making the move, so he's officially settled into position. Oh, he had trouble, though, as well. The 5 car ends up into the outside barriers off turn 10, so right after putting the pressure on the defending winner of this race for so long, the 5 car is out early.
Oh, it's once again turn number 10 and a big hit there into the outside tire barrier. Yeah, I was worried about that. Whenever a racer finds themselves in a situation where that dangling carrot that was hanging in front of them finally disappears, sometimes they're actually going to apply some more pressure on themselves in the moments afterwards. I think he saw that car of Efting driving away and was thinking, okay, I need to try and close up this time, and I need to do it now. I think he just put that pressure on himself way too much heading down to turn number 10. Unfortunately, it's going to bite him. A tough break for the rookie who's running so strong here today.
It's a lesson learned for the driver of the 5 machine, was of course trying his best to get around Law in that defending machine for a long time, and it's just that one mistake. And again, we talk about how an 18-lap sprint race here comparative to 78 laps, we are still way off of the mark. 61 to go here in St. Petersburg, and it's again one mistake just like that. Lock of the brakes, a car that gets a little bit too tight, tires were off on the front end, you don't have enough bite, and then all of a sudden you're dealing with a car that needs substantial repair. We'll see if the 5 and Weitzel can get back on the racetrack. Of course, that is heavy tether damage on the right wheel of his car. It looks like he has put it behind the garage. So Weitzel's night in the 5 is going to be done, making that 2 official DNFs here from St. Petersburg over the first 17 laps. Here's a battle between the 9th and 10th place cars on the racetrack. John Christensen and Sebastian Kinder, the 97, getting some big-time runners up into the top 10, and a driver that's already used a bit of his push to pass has 5 seconds less to use than the driver of the 44 in Christensen, but then, of course, trying to make sure they can make up track position as Amon Law putting some pressure on Andres Vinci and James Watson. This fight 3-way for 6th place.
Yeah, still side-by-side, hang down the start-finish straight away. This could get intense here into the heavy braking zone at turn number 1. Law looking for that spot, and he's going to take it P7 for that driver of the number 13 car. Just want to say this here real quick, and at the moment, we are getting rather close to the first round of pit stops, certainly for the drivers on those softer alternate tires. The track temperatures, despite the fact that some of this track is covered with shade, have soared now at 110 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 43 degrees Celsius. That is scorching hot for race cars. So we're getting to the point now where these tires, they're going to turn into small little black puddles scattered around St. Petersburg, Florida.
I don't know if it's hot enough to cook an egg on it, but we'll see. Very hot still in St. Petersburg, and not surprised that here in Florida it's going to be very hot as well. But Amon Law is turning up the heat on James Watson, getting lost all the track position, trying to get around Alexander Weitzel and play defense there in turn number 4. But in turn 14, slowly regaining composure, the driver, the 13, he'll carry down the main front straightaway, try to look for 6th place on James Watson. Those few single seconds off the road for Rotor Neftink, who's now the last driver in today's top 5. So just a reminder that coverage of the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg is brought to you by BooklyDoo. Create AI-generated personalized children's books today at BooklyDoo.com. There's Amon Law, dive in turn 4, hoping not to make the same mistake he did earlier on, and a very beautiful entry into the corner, making sure he stayed conservative. Watson letting him by for P6.
Yeah, and keep our eyes locked on some of these fights that could get intense at any single moment. Law, the only one of those 3 racers running on the softer tires. You'd usually think that's a benefit, but right now it's actually a bit of a curse. So, it is a benefit for Law. The 2 drivers behind on the softer tires running in a bit of a curse as it stands right now. As part of the reason why the gaps are starting to spread out between some of these racers. Although, as these drivers start to deal with some lap traffic, that will affect these battles at any given point in time. Talking about the overtaking game around this racetrack, we've already mentioned it in terms of drivers getting passes done on one another just for track position. Trying to get the lapping done later on in this race could be incredibly tricky. Over the past couple of years in real life, we have seen many races towards the end get affected with some lap traffic that the leaders have caught up to late. So keep an eye on that game as these drivers have to deal with lap traffic chicken throughout tonight.
And you mentioned lap traffic. This is the first proper example of it. Dan Ench in the number 52. He's already gone a lap down from the leaders, but courtesy call there on the main front straightaway, just letting the traffic by and not offering any kind of resistance. That's a driver that, of course, wants to keep his car clean, understanding the scope of how this race has already turned out over the first 21. 4 DNFs, with Matthias Strauss being back there trying to repair his car. He's just now coming out of pit road, so he will not be properly on the DNF list, but he was very close to being. Alexander Whitesell, Callum Ford, Katie Pollack were the drivers who are officially still behind the wall and in the garage. So they're going to end up with troubled race cars and have to work on for the next race later on in this season that'll happen in Michigan in the Irish Hills on August 22nd, our first proper oval race of the season. So here's a battle inside the top 9. Remember, we were watching Sebastian Kinder still going on this battle with John Christensen, still applying the pressure. Those two at around the same lap times at a 104.1, 101.2, 104.2 rather. And they're just continuing to stay right locked with each other, the 2 drivers, of course, on the harder compound of Firestone Firehawk. So we should expect them to gain at least a little more time on the Redwald cars that have certainly sprinkled themselves nicely in the middle of this top 5. But Ron, if you are Adam Williams, right, or Dylan Bittman at the front of this field, you have pretty sizable gap. I'd say Bittman a little less at a second and a half over Julian Altena, but Williams is enjoying about 11 seconds clear of the rest of this field. Do you promise very much the undercut, or do you think you can extend it just a little bit longer, especially with the gap that the race leader has right now, a bit more time to just scurry away and play it easy?
Oh, and that is a very good question. If it were me, I would maybe extend the strategy out just a little bit. You've built a cushion. In an ideal world, much like a spare parachute whenever you go skydiving, you won't have to use that gap. However, in a situation like this where it's a very, influx race, you drivers are going to have to worry about the strategy from the drop of the green through to the fall of the checkered. If I were Williams, I would maybe just lean on that gap a little bit. Now, if it goes below about 8 seconds, that's probably the call to say, nope, I'm coming down pit lane. I am bailing out on doing any more of this. But you do have the benefit of being able to say, okay, look, I can take it easy for now. I could just pace myself a little bit, as he has probably done throughout most of this race. He's been keeping it very tidy up towards the front, hasn't had to worry about dirty air for the most part, although with the slow speeds around this track, there aren't too many turns where the dirty air is going to hurt you that badly. He's just been able to run his own race quietly up at the north end of the field. I can imagine out of all the drivers that started this race on the alternate tires, Williams' tires are probably in the best condition out of all of them. Now, you probably wouldn't want to buy them for sale used on eBay. However, it's still a heck of a lot better than what the other drivers are probably having to work with right now.
And mind you, he hasn't had to use that much of his race car in order to extend this gap. He is just clearly the fastest car on the racetrack through these first 23. He actually did use 3 seconds of his push to pass. So whether that was just a misclick, no, it's not. He's intentionally using it down the straightaway. This is probably to keep up the gap that you were talking about, Ron, making sure it stays around the right marker of around 10 to 11 seconds. It's now 10.6 as they're coming off of turn number 1. So it is that kind of thing of gap management between Williams and Bittman, who the second place car has not used any precious amount of the push to pass. Again, that's going to matter come lap number 75, 76, and of course getting to the final laps when you are in a battle for position, or if the race leaders end up in any sort of interesting position when it comes down to having to defend or attack on either part of this street circuit. Here's the battle for 7th place on the racetrack. James Watson, a very calm and collected event so far for the driver who started this one back in P8 of this racetrack. Only has gained 1, and the same thing for Andres Vinci, the driver right behind him. And those two, of course, right alongside each other. Turn 3, dive in the inside. Turn 4, ooh. Vinci to the bottom. Vinci has the spot and makes it up to 7th.
Oh, I did not have a good feeling about that, I'll be honest. He took such a shallow approach heading down into the turn. I was expecting him to just sail off into the tire barrier, but getting that move done in expert way, that's the spot for 7 for Vinci, and what a way to get it done there as well. Again, talking about the spots to get a move done here, there's only one that I think is a true slam dunk opportunity. It's turn number 1, and that is basically it. Every other spot on this racetrack, if you want to get a move done, you've got to work for it, and you've got to have the stones to try and get that move done as well. What a move there to jump his way up into 7th, getting towards the end of this stint. Hey, if you're not going to have the tires on the car for too long, you may as well use them up.
Well, it almost looks like they're trying to get a piece of Arthur's sword and the Excalibur. They're just carrying so much bravery into turn number 4. Probably one of the tighter places to make any kind of move, but again, it's off of a kink on a long straightaway at the first sector here, so why not try it at another potential chance? Sebastian Kinder took a peek for a second, but of course denied himself the opportunity there in the corner. Tried to play it safe as he's still a few car lengths back. Bit of a bobble there off of the corner to turns 8 and 9. So again, it's a dive on the brakes for turn number 10. We've already seen drivers, Alexander Weitzel, we saw Callum Ford end up in the same problem, getting the right front tire to overcook and lock up at the entry there. High speeds when you carry into what is the fastest chicane here in this St. Petersburg track, but we'll keep an eye on that battle and this one as well between Vinci and Watson. And these are two drivers on the same set of tires. They have used different sets of push to pass. 129 seconds left for Andres Vinci. And our first driver in the middle of the top 10, it is James Watson coming in on pit road for the first call of today's race.
And so Watson, one of the drivers that has been in the thick of it throughout, having to make that call to come down pit lane. I'm sure the alternate tires on that race car were worn down to the canvas by this point. Gotta wonder who will be the next to follow. Many of those drivers that started on the softer red sidewall tires found themselves, put through the ringer. They've been involved in battle after battle, fight after fight, and scrap after scrap. You've got to find yourself thinking, okay, are my tires able to hold on much longer? 27 laps around this track in the speeds that these IR18 IndyCars are taking them in, that is no mean feat at all, even for the harder primary tires. So this is quite fascinating that we're seeing these racers being able to run this long. I would expect those softer runners to have come in just a little bit earlier than they are.
Well, Watson has slapped on a brand new set of alternate tires, again going back to the rule that is implemented for this race and the road courses across the schedule, even though we don't have many of them over a 7-race stretch for season number 16. A very small schedule, but one that still will have its pack a punch, if you will, as we watch the battles later on in this field. You do have to use the alternate tires twice on a stint. So once you already use the alternates, then you can use the primaries. Oh, there's a spinner from the race leader off turn 14. The one rare mistake for Adam Williams. I was about to mention Dylan Bittman has been catching him on lap time, but not by much. And it's the first scare for the rookie who sat on the pole for this Grand Prix.
And we take a look at heading his way off through the final turn. You can see it just trying to swap ends very quickly. Thankfully, does not get hit by anybody as a result of that, is able to rejoin without any further incident. The handling on this car for Williams has been falling away for a while. I'll be honest, Kenneth, and say that I wasn't too sure about him using the push to pass to try and maintain that gap. That feels like a stopgap solution at best, and at worst it feels like putting a band-aid over a gushing wound. Right now, I think you got to hit the point with Williams to say, okay, do I try and come down pit lane? That gap that I said, you know how I said that if you lean on that gap a little bit and it gets down to 8 seconds, that's maybe the call to come down pit lane? That's now gone down to 6, and it continues to fall because those tires that may have been the best out of anybody on the softer rubber, they have now been worn down to the canvas and have big flat spots on them as a result of that slide. This may be the time for Williams to call the ball and come down pit lane.
And Williams is experiencing a full ski sled on turn 14. That car is extremely free out there in the middle of that corner. He has tried to fight the IR-18 for what it's worth to keep it on the racing surface, and another batch of drivers on pit road. This time, it is the drivers from second and third. Bittman is in. Altena follows. The VOR blue IR-18 sitting right behind. We saw a great fight between those two machines. It will alleviate some of the pressure from the race leader, but I'd imagine things are not feeling well. Williams again, a large slide into turn 8. This car is on ice off of turn 9.
I feel like I'm watching a horror movie riding on board right now. I'm getting jump scare after jump scare just seeing that number 51 car skate around the track. It is really worrisome riding on board with Williams, with his main adversary of Bittman coming down pit lane last time around, fitting the harder primary tires. You gotta shadow that call right now. Let's keep an eye on it. Yeah, again, having some big sideways snaps. Yeah, this is a logical call. You gotta come down pit lane. He's skating around the track like a declawed cat climbing up an igloo.
Yep, saying too many scares. Yeah, let's go home. And home is pit road, at least for the moment. So slap on a brand new set of tires. Now, the biggest question is, for those who just came down pit road, are they using the red-walled alternate tires or the primaries? It is a split decision in the battle for what is now net position number 2. Remember, Dylan Bittman had the red wall tires to start this race. Altena kind of on the opposite end. Well, they have flipped strategies. So now Bittman is on the primary tires for this middle part of the stint, while Altena is going to try to burn his first set of the red-walled alternate tires. You see those drivers already trying to change position as Toby Deck and a few others have hit the pit lane. Adam Williams has escaped to be at least 5.3 seconds ahead of Dylan Bittman in this battle for the lead. That leaves Roden Neftink up front, Alon Mall right behind him in the running for second. And that leaves at least 3 to 4 cars in the middle of this top 10 that have not come in on pit road yet. So they'll try this very large overcut strategy, all of them mostly on the primary set of tires, so they can go longer than everyone else. It's just a matter of how they use it. And Julian Altena on the red-walled alternate tires into turn number 10, of course, trying to add this pressure. Remember, this battle had settled quite long ago. Bittman, a large send in turn 1 to get around the 11 car. Altena has a chance to get his lick back off turn 14.
And I'll be honest and say I'm liking the strategy call that Bittman's on right now. He may be sacrificing this middle stint, but you want to peak at the right time. You want to try and get the best tires on your race car when the track is going to be cooler. You're going to be feeling a lot better about yourself, and you're also going to be peaking at the right time when the pay window finally opens up. So keep an eye on Bittman as we go throughout this race. I'm feeling good about that number 93 car. He says probably about 5 laps before he impacts the wall because the commentator jinx is real. I'm looking right ahead, though. From Bittman, I can see a car with a broken front wing right up in front. Yes, there
That's Adam Williams.
Yeah, it is.
That's the net race leader and the pole sitter. So the day is continuing to worsen for the driver, the 51. And not only does he have worsened downforce, he's got 2 of the strongest drivers apart from him all race long that are right on his tail. And Williams catches Bittman. Altena is able to squeeze by. They crash in turn 10. There was Adam Williams on pit road, but you're not seeing it now. The race leader, the net driver who's been dominating this race around halfway, is out at lap 31.
Yeah, so it's disaster for Williams, who's been oh so strong throughout this race. It ends in disaster through turn number 10. And just like that, 2 of the strongest drivers throughout this race get wiped out in one foul swoop. It's again turn number 10, the turn that's already been a massive choke point throughout this race, and it catches out more racers. That is heartbreaking for both of the drivers. They're running so strong, so competitively, on debut no less, and just like that, it disappears.
That is an ugly hit. The 3rd driver to be involved in an accident in turn 10 with the exact same problem. And even worse than then, with the chipped off front wing, we don't know how that actually came off of the driver, the 51, but we knew it was going to matter in this grand scope of things, whether he was losing speed, which he was, or whether it was going to be a mistake like that. And it was Julian Altena who somehow escaped that calamity without a single scar on his number 11 IR-18, and he is now the net race leader. So that leaves 3 rookie drivers in one fell swoop over the first half of this BooklyDoo Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. The season 16 opener has not been nice to the newcomers.
Yeah, so it's disaster for Williams, who's been oh so strong throughout this race. And he is now the net race leader. So that leaves 3 rookie drivers in one fell swoop over the first half of this BooklyDoo Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. The season 16 opener has not been nice to the newcomers. Yeah, and thinking about the incidents we've seen through turn number 10, that's now been 3 of the other mono competition drivers. We just saw that incident there with Williams and Bittman. We saw a little bit earlier on Alexander Weitzel was involved in some drama through there as well. So that is 3 team cars all caught out in the exact same turn in very similar fashion. Heartbreaking there. Absolutely gut-wrenching even. In all of this, you focus now on the driver running in 10th, the number 8 machine of Reed. Luke Reed, throughout all of this, has now been able to escape out as your leader of the rookies. Now, I don't think we're going to get a rookie anywhere near the podium as a result of that collision, but able to weather the storm in what we thought was going to be a very challenging opening race. We talked about throwing a child into the deep end of the pool as basically taking an infant and throwing them into the frigid Arctic waters around Antarctica here for this first round of the championship. What an odd and bewildering and befuddling series of events. We're pretty much left with only one rookie running competitively right now.
St. Petersburg has pretty much chopped off those drivers who thought they can take a bite of the apple in the Season 16 VOR IndyCar Series. Just an unbelievable set of events, and the 6-time road course winner, 3rd on the all-time winning list in this series, Julian Altena, who won a Road America road course race, his most recent road course victory back in January of this year, is going to try to cap off a 7th win with still another half of this race to go. The gap sits at around 10 seconds. It's Toby Deck, who was extremely aggressive on the opening stint and made up some track position on the alternate set, makes a mistake in turn 10, but this time doesn't get into the safer barriers, and the tire walls there ends up just scathing around. It's a very close call. Rotor Nefting's going to take 2nd. Amon Law back in 3rd. That battle will continue to shape up. And this day continues to open up in the dramatic sense. Cathartic first half of this race in Florida.
Yeah, St. Pete is known as one of those tracks that can absolutely ruin a driver. And we've seen that get put on full display quite a lot over the past just 25 minutes. It has been the standard reflection that we thought this race was going to be. Okay, it's going to be tricky, it's going to be tough. That's been completely turned on its head over the past couple of moments.
Well, we'll see if things calm down, and you're watching 5th, 6th, and 7th place, all of them running outside turn 1. That's the blue car of John Christensen that's leading this group in 5th. James Watson and Sebastian Kinder. So we saw kind of a healthy mix of these two. Kinder, of course, chasing down Christensen the entirety of the first run. All 3 of these drivers, by the way, in this battle running on the red-walled alternate tires as it stands with differing levels of push to pass. So far, it is the driver of the number 39 of Watson who has the most amount at 180 seconds to spare. But it is going to be fun to watch this battle shape up. Kinder, of course, hasn't been able to get around the 44 through most of the night, while Watson has had a fair share of battles himself. With the likes of Vinci and a few others, drivers that are now either further back in this field or out of this race. And so Watson will play a bit of defense there in turn 14, will allow Kinder to shape up just a little bit closer. These are drivers that have, for the most part, especially Christensen and Kinder, they have been around this series for a while. The Team Watson racing cars going at it for battle in turn number 1. Watson gives way, so Kinder will break free. I think that was just a courtesy decision, Ron, of, hey, I'll let you by. I know you're the faster car right now. I won't give you any trouble. Go catch the 44 car. That's proper team play between those two machines.
Yeah, proper team play, playing ball around this track as well. It's something that you've got to do on all street circuits, especially here at St. Pete. You got to pick and choose your battles, and you've got to play that game very, very well. If you can't manage, what fights you get involved in, you're going to just end up in petty squabbles for absolutely nothing. And in a short season like this, these drivers can't afford to have bad races. They have got to be on it all the time. So it lays on the pressure about as thick as icing on top of a wedding cake. It makes these drivers wary about trying to get involved in bad situations. You can do that here at this race. Frankly, you could do that throughout the rest of the season calendar. We showed it at the top of the broadcast, but looking through all of the races that we have, this here at St. Pete's, the road course later on this season at Barber, natural terrain road course, and not as tight and twisty as these streets, but still a mammoth of a road course down there in Alabama. You've also got the tricky ovals. Michigan, that's a track that's known for being a bit of a car killer when it was on the IndyCar schedule up until 2007. That is a fantastic race, but will likely be one where these drivers are going to have to settle with the checkers or records attitude. Kansas used to host IndyCar back in the day. Those races were always insane. The Indy 500 on September the 19th here in this series. We know for a fact that that's going to be a very competitive race. It's Indy. The driver's going to put the pressure on themselves for that. And then we've got Richmond and Gateway, two short tracks to round this 7-round championship off. Pretty much split down the middle between the faster ovals, the slower ovals, road courses, street circuits, and of course the Indy 500. It is a fantastic schedule that we have, but one that will test these drivers upon every single twist and turn.
It's one of those schedules that is packed up the all-time best for VOR IndyCar Series, and it was announced, Julian Altena making the announcement that this is, at the moment, for the foreseeable future, the last VOR IndyCar Series calendar that we will see until, hopefully, it does get revived sometime soon, or there will be a motivation to continue it. A very class field that we've seen over the years. A league that started back in the pandemic years, 2020. That's where iRacing really blew up, as the racing world and real life had to shut down for a while, and we had iRacing as a means of getting to our fix and having our emotions ramp up high and get into the action of competitive racing, especially for those who maybe don't have the financial ability to go out and race in real life, and having this be their hobby as we watch this battle for what is second place. Amon Law, who won this race last time we were here in the doubleheader, capping off what is right now an Altena Autosport 1-2-3. Altena leading, F. Tinkin second, and of course the Law machine we just referenced, that purple and white IR18, and now running on the back end of the podium. And speaking of Altena, the two-time winner last season, won one of his races at Road America, his other at Richmond Raceway, the last time we were there in season 15. So I think, honestly, Ron, when we go down to the Commonwealth of Virginia, a track that is mostly known for its NASCAR fixtures and for hosting stock cars, that has, of course, hosted Indy cars in its prior years, but not often do we see IR18 leagues go to that Richmond track. That's so short, has very differing levels of banking, and it's very fun to drive as Law continues to add on the heat to his teammate, running for second. Long run down runway 24, the Albert Whitted Airport, and in turn one, Amon Law makes the move for second.
And getting that spot there, P2 for Law. We'll see if Efting can maybe try and respond in the next couple laps before Law looks to try and run away. Interesting point about Richmond. This may have been forgotten about over the past half a decade after Pocono was axed from the IndyCar schedule following the 2019 Pocono 500. Richmond was meant to be the track that replaced it on the 2020 IndyCar calendar. However, thanks to the pandemic, they ended up canceling that race and never rescheduled it. IndyCar was meant to return there for the first time since the 2000s. Never came to be. So that'll be real interesting to see these IR18s run around the track, and won't get the opportunity to see it in real life unless they bring it back next year, because of course, big news in the IndyCar sphere this past week, the brand new IR28 was revealed. Brand new chassis, not just a brand new reskin of the old venerable Dallara DW12 that's been in use since 2012. That is an absolutely glorious looking race car. It looks like a futuristic version of the cars that we have right now. May not be the big leap that some may have had in mind, but that brand new IR28 is absolutely fantastic. Kenneth, have you seen some of the other work with that car? It looks stunning.
I have, and the wings look unbelievable. I mean, I've enjoyed the wing design on these IR18s as of late, but seeing the IR28 in action, which did get a shakedown at Indianapolis just a few days ago, so IndyCar is already quick to put that car on the testing grounds and start having a lot of fun with it before it reaches real-life competition in a few years. There's Dan Ensch, who we saw give away position on the front straightaway to go a lap down in just a courtesy decision. He has since encountered some front wing damage on the driver, who is still out there, not coming down pit road. And there's a little bit of an offshore excursion, and the USF boards there in turn number 4, or rather turn number 8, but he'll get around and he'll be okay for the most part, as Amon Law has pulled away from Roden F-Tink. And think about it, Ron. I mean, how many years to pass before we eventually got an announcement of a brand new IndyCar chassis? That is about, 14 years of a car that has gone through many different iterations, from the initial DW12 and then the revamps with the Aero packages to eventually what became the IR18. But to have a brand new chassis and to have a brand new redesign of the car in 2028, how special is that for IndyCar to just step into a brand new age as the series continues to evolve.
Yeah, it is absolutely awesome to finally see a brand new IndyCar for the first time in quite some time. The first time the DW12 was revealed, back when it was still referred to as the IR12 before the unfortunate passing of Dan Weldon, who was the main test driver during the development of that car in the later half of 2011. That car was revealed in August of 2011. To show you how old that car is, I believe that was in the summer before I started first grade. That is how old that car is.
I'm not even sure that the car was even on iRacing by the time it was 2012. I mean, we were still using the Aero 5, the initial generation that basically boosted the early 2000s years of the IRL after Champ Car became a thing and karts started to fall off, and we had what eventually became the merge in 2008. But to see the history of this chassis. I mean, the IR18 has developed a lot with the new halo system and the front windscreen, obviously the wings, and just the power, the hybrid system that's been involved over the last few years in open wheel American oval racing and road course racing as well. It's been wild to see that IndyCar has gotten this long with mostly the same foundation, how successful it's been, but ready to step into a brand new age of American open wheel racing. And hopefully the drivers will get to experience those cars very soon, and we get to experience it on iRacing. Not sure how long it'll take, but coming off of a few different announcements for IndyCar as well, the brand new video game that's set to come out later in 2027. So, Ron, I think that'll be a lot of fun for a lot of people and IndyCar fans and maybe non-IndyCar fans who may get introduced to the console game. iRacing Studios being a part in developing the first IndyCar game since, I believe, 2003 with IndyCar Series 2005. It's been a long time for IndyCar stuff. Glad to see that they're finally getting the love that they deserve.
Yeah, I just looked into this. I don't like this stat. The last time an IndyCar game was released was June 22nd of 2004. Yeah, I was not alive for the last time an IndyCar game was released. It is unbelievable the way that IndyCar racing has gone. And I was, when we were talking about Michigan and everything going over to iRacing when the pandemic started back in 2020. I'm not sure if people remember this, the IndyCar iRacing Invitational that they had, and the rather embarrassing start at Michigan. During one of the events during all that. If I had $1 for every single time a bunch of IndyCar drivers wrecked before the start of a very important race at Michigan, I would have $2, which is not a lot, but it's weird that happened twice.
Yeah, I just have the vision in my head of Bob Varsha hyping up the entire field, and then they crash in turn number 3 on the pace lap while going 3 abreast. And I was also thinking back to the initial IndyCar game in the early 2000s. Michigan, a lot of the oval tracks on the schedule, I don't even think you could run a road course in those early years of the 2000s IndyCar Series games. You just had to run the ovals because that's basically what the IRL schedule was. They did not expand back into road course racing for a little while. So you did have tracks like, you did have a track like Richmond in there. Texas was in there. Some of the famed ovals, obviously Indianapolis has to be involved, but you have tracks like Pikes Peak International Raceway. I don't know if a lot of people remember that track, but that, of course, was involved in that game. So see the evolution of it all in the IndyCar history, and obviously how much love it's going to get here with the brand new game in 2027 and the brand new IndyCar era that'll happen in a few years' time. You're watching On Board with the driver of the 39 and James Watson, the Team Watson Racing entry, and a driver who let his teammate behind, Sebastian Kinder. Kinder has not been able to crunch down in that gap for what is 5th place on John Christensen, the Altena Autosport car. They're on a different set of tires, of course, by 1 lap, but they are on the same alternate compound of tire. Kinder just has not had the outright pace to keep up with Christensen somehow like he did in the initial run of this race. Watson has kept tabs of this teammate. That so far is the closest battle out there on St. P. The battle for the lead is 9.5 seconds between teammates Altena and Law with 33 to go. So there is at least one more pit stop to be awaiting the drivers in this field. But I think, Ron, we have officially gotten over the crescendo mark of this race where we had Williams make mistakes, we had the battle for the lead on strategy change, and then we had the crash that took out the top 2 net points drivers that were set to take away 1st and 2nd once this officially cycled through. Altena's in cruising mode here with 31 left.
Yeah, and Altena has it made strategically as well, because in that first stint, if you remember, he was running on the other harder tires, so he's going to be able to run it soft through to the very end, and things are just coming up well. We'll say, I was wondering whether the track conditions would potentially evolve in the favor of those drivers running the soft tires towards the end. Now we're still 32 laps away from the end of this race, but as you can see, track temperatures have just now fallen below 44 degrees Celsius at 110 Fahrenheit. So it was peaking at 44 C, 111 Fahrenheit, just a matter of a few moments ago, which is scorching. My usual metric for judging the temperature of a racetrack is, would you feel comfortable walking around there barefoot? Chances are probably not, with a bunch of Indy cars moving around here at 150 miles an hour, but even then that would get rather toasty. I think some lidocaine or some burn gel or something like that would maybe be in effect after that. These tires as well, it gets to the point where it's not a matter of just the wear. The track starts to lose grip after a while. Back in the karting days, a lot of the surfaces that I ran on out here on the East Coast were asphalt surfaces, really harsh blacktop, and the summer sun would just soak into that surface so much that by the time you would come back, the tires would be just scorching hot, and you would be skidding around like a madman towards the very end. These drivers having to deal with a very rough and patchy surface where, look at the undulation, as that was a perfect camera shot as they had their way through some of the tight twisties right there on the back half of the circuit. That was through the likes of 8 and 9, I believe, but it's just a small little undulation here. Florida not really known for its elevation change. It's probably the flattest state in the country. However, it's just a small little undulations in the road. It doesn't have to be a matter of feet that the track falls away from you. It could be a matter of inches, and in cars that are tuned to the nearest millimeter, that can make a huge difference. So I am shocked that these drivers have been able to keep the tires as good underneath them as they have been.
Ron, you know how we have a Chili Bowl flip counter? I think we may have to have an analogy counter for you in this race alone. I've already counted probably more than 5 or 6 of them over the course of this race. There's Dan Ench, who has gone multiple laps down. Remember that wing damage that he has still not come down pit road to fix. He's just nursing this IR18. He's back in 13th now, 3 laps down. He was telling some drivers, hey, go right, go right, go right. And there was a bit of miscommunication there down the straightaway with one of the drivers, Matthias Strauss, most likely, that got around and ended up creating just a little bit of an issue there, but Ench just trying to warn the drivers to get around. That was actually Toby Deck that was attempting to make his way through. Oh, contact between the two, and that's where Ench had really just said, hey, go right, just, I'm telling you where to go. But Deck, of course, wanting to take the left line, feeling that was the right way to go. But we talk about, again, the track surface and the way the tires wear out over the course of the race. The one thing we also haven't discussed are the lines. You see the lines here in turn 1 especially. You can see the darkened asphalt as it's come through. That's not just the natural part of the track when no cars are running on it and there hasn't been any track activity. That is because of all those cars, all the energy put in over the course of what is a relatively long race now with 28 laps to go next time by. That's all of the energy in the rubber being put down, so it darkens these lines. And with the dynamic track model on iRacing, Ron, you have a slickened race surface. So when you have so many of these cars putting in all these laps with a hot track temperature and the tires that are scorching hot, then how does it feel in those lines when they're all rubbered in and you've got so many cars on there at the same time?
Well, thankfully, it's almost like a drag strip whenever you're heading through those sections. It's really grippy, really rubbered up. You can go through there, lean on those tires a little bit more. You can't really rely on the aerodynamic grip in many sections of this racetrack. The wings don't really do much service to you when you're going around a turn at about 50 miles an hour, but the rubber on the road certainly is. And you can see it's one thing that helps these drivers, especially down into turn number 1 here on the main runway at Alfred Woodard Airport. Having to worry about the painted surfaces there on the side. Thankfully, these drivers not having to worry about racing in the rain. But even in the dry, if there were no rubber down on the road, it would be super slippery. The main thing that these drivers have to worry about, it's almost like a train in a sense. If you go off of those tracks, if you go off the rails, so to speak, you're going to find yourself on the marbles. And your car is almost going to resemble a curling stone, but instead of the curling stone going into the small little bullseye on the other end of the ice sheet or into some other curling stones, it's going to find the many tires that are found in the nearest tire wall.
I'm surprised you made a curling reference. I think after the first few months of the year where everybody was practically tuned into the curling round robins that were happening almost every minute of every day. But yeah, you're right. It does offer a bit of that reprieve grip-wise, but of course it is something that the drivers still have to think about now that these tires have fully breathed into their cycle. And again, we go back to the tire markers that are indicated on the right side of the scoring tower on the left side of your screen. Top 3 running all red-walled alternate tires. And we are getting the first calls to pit road. James Watson, who was the first driver to pit in our first run from 9th, has called that he most likely will be pitting in. So it will be a chance for the 39 car to start his strategy and start to unlock what's going to be the final strategy call for everybody in this field. And whether it is what they had before, of course what they had after that's waiting for them, or whether it is using the 2 alternate tires first or using the primary tires early on and then using the faster tire later. It's been fun to watch this little bit of a difference on strategy. So here it begins. James Watson coming onto pit road. It looks like it'll happen this time by off of turn 14. We did see a couple drivers coming in. They were at the back of the field, but we should expect James Watson to be in and out. Looks like he already did make his stop, actually. So he did come in already the last lap by. So I was just watching his out lap that entire time. But he has officially kicked things off with 26 to go. There's Dan Inch finally on pit road. And he does fix the front end wing damage, so he'll be able to have a clean tip-top shaped car. But that should open the door for everyone else in this final stint.
Yeah, and so now the pit window is officially open for these drivers to try and get to the very end of this race. And certainly it's an Altena Racing stranglehold on this event as it stands currently. But you got to wonder what a driver like Deck may be able to do a little bit later on here in this race. He's running on those hard tires for now. May get the opportunity to stretch his legs just a bit as we follow Watson on some fresher rubber. It's the harder rubber, but it's fresh tires. And in a race like this, it doesn't really matter what color. Oh no, big wall contact there as he headed his way through turn number 10. Just skated a little bit, bad understeer as the track tightens up through there. Gotta wonder how that machine is feeling from Watson. That was dead on the wheel. That did not look like a straight shot either. I wonder if there's, albeit faint, but suspension damage done there nonetheless.
Yeah, there might be some harsh effects there, but so far all is well, at least for right now. And it's just a matter of seeing how this car feels over the next lap. Might have just gotten away with that hard contact and still been okay for the most part. And it is Brian Fiolas, and the driver of the 06, who's trying to chase Watson down in this fight for 8th. Now, those are the first 2 cars that are put a lap down, but of course that is just barring all of the other drivers that have yet to come in on pit road. So once the field does officially cycle, then it will be a proper unlapping momentary situation for them, and they'll just eventually get around and it'll be all okay for the most part. So we keep an eye on Watson, starting to pull away now from Fiolas. And again, the battle for the lead is actually crunched down. 2 seconds between Altena and Amon Law on what is a 4-lap better tire difference for the driver of the 13 in Law. Again, they are on the same alternate compound, but again, it depended on when you came on to pit road. It's Altena staying out for now, and Law chasing him down for the lead.
Yeah, so now the fight could very well be on for these top spots. Altena, no stranger to success here in this championship. As he said, finished 2nd at the end of season 15. Looking for a little bit more, but you can see a bit of a lockup there heading down into the turn. Altena is feeling more and more pressure as we get towards the end of this race. And talking about Lal, he's already found the limit. He found the limit into that exact turn a little bit earlier on in this race. We saw him with a big lockup, a huge lockup, even having to spin it around in the runoff area. Finding the limit around this racetrack and being able to get away with it, it feels almost like a personal renaissance in one of these events. You can be able to say, okay, look, I know where that razor-thin margin is. I know how far I can lean over it before I finally split my differential and fully tip over. Lal, I think, does have that benefit as here they go.
Oh, here they come. Leaders 1-2 in on pit road on the very same lap. 23 laps to go this time by. And it's the Altena Autosport duo who has been leading this for the most part, coming on to pit road for the final time. Question is, what tires do they take and who comes out first? Few of the drivers that are out off of pit road this time by. Brian Fiolas has also entered pit road, so it'll be a matter of them also getting around. And the race leaders have come in for what will be the final time in this race. Roden Eftink has stayed out alongside Toby Deck Altena trying to beat Law, but Law gets him to the line. I'm on Law on the 13. What a pit stop. Cranking in 7.8 seconds. And Altena slides off of turn 3 into the outside wall.
And just like that, he is going to be out of it. Massive damage. The wheels ripped off. Altena's night in the Florida sun ends right there. And here it was, a swaparoo as they came out of pit lane. And here he goes, trying to get through on the softer tires. Just lost it on entry. A big sideways snap there. Very unnatural. I think that car hit a bad bump and just swapped ends. Spinning around like a top, hits the wall, and just like that, what could have been a race win all comes to naught, not only with a slightly longer run through pit lane, but a bad impact there on the wall. He's got to try and bring it back into the pits, both no fast repairs and only 23 laps left to go. That'll likely be game, set, match for Altena, a heartbreaker.
It's the curse for Altena on the cold tires, just slipping and sliding through turn 3, trying to get Amon Law to be back in range for the lead. What is now the net race lead, as Toby Deck and Rotor Nefting have yet to hit pit road. The drama continues here at St. Petersburg. We were on track for the first Altena Autosport 1-2 finish since January 31st of this year, and the Road America Season 15 race where it was Altena and Law exactly 1-2. This time, Altena will be missing out in action. He finally scurries his car to pit road. He's nursing it to the end, and that's either going to be day over or a long repair with 22 laps to go. F-Tink and Deck still out in front. Lawless chasing down Deck, who still has to make the pit stop.
Yeah, so keeping an eye on this pack as things get wild towards the end. It's a moot point, but one that I do want to bring up either way. I wonder if the reason why those two drivers were able to swap there on pit lane was just as a result of Altena maybe using a little bit more push to pass, burning up a bit more gas, and having to compensate with a slightly longer stop. That could have been what put him in that situation in the first place.
Here's a look at the replay. This was Alexander White, so remember his car torn up earlier in turn 10. Since that moment, and since Callum Ford also hit the outside wall in that very same corner, we've had a few other cars have trouble over the course of the night. It just, St. Petersburg has not been kind at all. This was the other one involving the race leader, so it is really the second time tonight we have the leader in trouble and catching contact with a wall or car right alongside. There was Adam Williams, the rookie who led on pole, crashing in turn 10. Dylan Bittman, nowhere to go, and the two drivers end up out of it extremely early. That's how Altena got by and took the race lead, and of course it was until that mistake in turn number 3 as Amon Law take the race lead. There was the second look at the incident in turn 10. It's just an ugly hit. Altena did a wonderful job getting in and out of the situation as quickly as possible, and now the recent victim, Julian Altena, slide turn 3. Hard hit to the outside wall, and out he goes. Told us in the YouTube chat, well, that wasn't a fun time. The driver of the 11 car ends up in the incident, and now it's 13 seconds as Amon Law has taken the race lead. Rotor Nefting and Toby Deck have officially made their final pit stop with 20 laps to go. So, Ron, what a day this has been from St. Petersburg. Was not expecting at least that many fireworks in the opening race. We have turned out to be 4th of July in Washington, D.C. all over again. It has been a stunner of a show, and Law hoping he can carry it mistake-free until the checkered.
I don't even think the DC fireworks display this last year is doing it justice. I believe it was San Diego back in about 2013 had a pyrotechnics fault and let off all of their fireworks from their display in one single shot. It is one of the best videos on the entirety of the internet. I love it with all my heart. I briefly had it as my morning wake-up alarm, and that's kind of what we've seen here today. It has just been a wild, wild event. Right now, as it stands currently, we have 13 cars running out there on the racetrack of the 18 that took the green. And of those 13 that are left, how many of them have been able to get through this race unscathed? We saw that incident for Altena. He's still out there on the racetrack trying to bring this one home. We saw Ensch with some trouble a little bit earlier on. Many drivers up and down the running order have been bit by the snakes that run in the sand around this racetrack. It has been a wild one to get this season up, off, and rolling.
And how many of them are on the lead lap? Well, the answer is 7 cars that are on the lead lap as it goes. The last one now make it, it's still 7. Pim Van Gassel and James Watson. This battle is actually for the last spot on the lead lap of the racetrack right now. Toby Deck has revisited pit road, so there must have been an issue for the driver of the 83. Came down the lap right before for typical service, but just a quick splash and go for Deck. He is in and out, and he will retake position. He'll fall back to third, and he'll try to track down Rotor Neftink, although that gap is rather large. More than 20 seconds between those two cars. This and Deck and Christensen are the closest battles on the racetrack, coming through turns 4, 5, 6, and 7. And, of course, out to the very tight right-handers of turns 8 and 9. And one of those things you see on the outside of turn number 8 are banners representing the University of South Florida. And I was thinking to myself, Ron, how many colleges are represented on iRacing tracks as of right now? I think the answer might be just 3. St. Petersburg seems to be the only road course with a college represented on the side. I know my alma mater, FIU's at Homestead Miami Speedway, and I'm pretty sure UNOH is still out there on Bristol Motor Speedway, at least a version of it. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, so it's interesting to note that there is a little bit of college representation out there on the racetracks. iRacing doing a beautiful job with some of the scans around here. I will say there's some college representation when it comes into the booth. You, of course, mentioned your alma mater. I have not gone to college. However, with some of the antics I occasionally get up to on the air, I would not be shocked if I could get into clown college on a scholarship.
Oh. Well, I think I'd like to join you, for sure. I'd like to get a little bit of experience in the clown college. That'd be a lot of fun.
I mean, it works for me because I've got roughly the same shoe size as a clown. So, I mean, I'm already one step ahead.
Well, that seems a little bit closer to more like NBA players, right? Like basketball players having large shoe sizes. I mean, you've probably seen the shoe size of someone like a Shaquille O'Neal, and I'm not, that's just incredible. But just a point out there, basketball could be an opening as well. Tim Van Gastel looks to the inside of James Watson, turn 14, this battle for 6th.
Whoa, as you can see him snapping at the wheel, trying to get that car wrangled around as he headed his way out of that final turn. Again, talking about the grip around this racetrack. Yes, you do have a lot of rubber put on the road, but with how hot it is, the track is so greasy, especially as you head your way through that airport section that does not take rubber the same way that the streets do. It's a different aggregate, it's a different surface, many different surfaces that these drivers are having to utilize, which is just pretty much a mark of basically all street circuits in the IndyCar world, at least the ones that we have here on iRacing. Long Beach has a lot of different surfaces to it, although it is fairly uniform. The Toronto street circuit don't have it on iRacing, and sadly that track is officially gone the way of the Dodo Bird, being replaced by the brand new Markham street circuit about an hour's drive away up there in Ontario. But many of the IndyCar street circuits are kind of known for just having so many different surfaces that you can never really nail it down. I appreciate the fact they are true, genuine street circuits, though, and not just random bits of pavement that they decide to put occasional road markings on, like Formula One has done with some of their street circuits over the past half decade.
And you also think of other street circuits that now not featured on the IndyCar calendar, but still a beloved one on the sim. And even among IndyCar fans, the Detroit Belle Isle circuit that is also very bumpy, has its fair share of challenges, probably even narrower than this St. Petersburg street course here in Florida. And that track has a ton of bumps. That track, of course, replaced by the downtown Detroit street circuit that has mixed reviews from a lot of IndyCar fans, but that Belle Isle circuit still very much loved by the open wheel community and a lot of other drivers on the sim who've enjoyed the likes of that track. And obviously the IMSA cars that were on Belle Isle for a little while, as Pim Van Gastel continues to apply the pressure on James Watson in this running for 6th place. Now, Watson does have 4-lap worse tires than the driver right behind him in Van Gastel, but Watson does have the push-to-pass still to use. He does have the harder compound tires as well, so still with 15 laps to go, plenty of time for Watson to scurry away and use a bit of a gap, instead using a bit of the push-to-pass down this main straightaway to pull a gap and making sure he can stay in front. Those drivers also not too far adrift of Sebastian Kinder, the driver of the 97 car, who is Team Watson Racing teammates with the driver of the 39 right behind. So very well, we could have at least the 3-car battle in the middle of this top 5 group in the final 15, now 14 laps of this race. There is the drivers going around. Amon Law still in the race lead. He has lapped everybody but the top 7, and he's actually crunching in closer on this battle for 6th place. So there may be even more drivers at mercy of being at risk of put a lap down. But the one thing we have learned over the course of this race, do not play with fire here at St. Pete. The race leader trying to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I feel like we've seen two different kinds of strategies throughout this race. We've seen those drivers playing with fire and those doing jumping jacks in front of a firing squad. The ones who've been playing with fire, they may have singed eyebrows, but they're still at least running out there on the racetrack as going to try and yield to the lap car there. That's Law again, the spot there. So a little easy peasy as it does, heading down the start-finish straightaway, and Van Gastel letting him pass, playing ball when it comes to the lap traffic game. Now having to worry about Law. At this point, he doesn't really have much to gain trying to go through this lap traffic as efficiently as possible. I always bring it up when it comes to especially in multi-class endurance sports car racing, but really all events where lap traffic is something that the drivers have to worry about. The game of lap traffic chicken. We talked about it briefly in a very different context earlier on this broadcast, Kenneth, about how these drivers are always going to try and push it to the absolute limit, and you can't really take it easy because one driver's going to push, then the next one is, and it's just going to snowball throughout the entirety of the field until everybody's running at 110%. When it comes to the lap traffic, that's exactly the same that gets played as well. You see drivers go for some bold and audacious moves. Thankfully, the lap cars are playing ball with these drivers, but whenever you do see, especially a fight of two cars that are very close together, having to cut through lap traffic at the same time, that's when you see some bonsai moves get played. Thankfully, the drivers in the series, a lot smarter than that. They know how to play ball, especially around the tight confines of this track.
And I already took notice of the conservative nature of Pim Van Gastel. Saw the race leader behind and took the front straightaway as a usable runway, literally and figuratively, for the race leader to move on by without any sort of issue. And the same has gone down with James Watson. So those two, although they understand the battle that they have harnessed within them to keep or try and take away sixth place, they know the race leaders out there. They know they don't want to play too much of a factor in any drama that could take the race leader out or themselves out and give them damage in any manner. So Van Gastel will just say, hey, I'll meet you later. We'll re-engage in this battle for sixth, but we'll just let the race leader by. We'll let him have his time. We'll let him be clean and composed at the front of this field, and we'll just let him on through. Same thing with Sebastian Kinder, who is not too far up the road to this battle for sixth place and fifth, and he's also just let the race leader by. So that makes it only 4 cars that are on the lead lap here at St. Petersburg with 11 laps to go. I don't think I would have ever expected to say that sentence today, given how competitive this field was at the start, but we've seen the drama, the chaos, everything in between, and it is now just panning out to a cruise at the end. Drivers understand the scope of what this race is worth, starting this relatively short season on the right note, trying to keep all the points that they can harness and try and carry that momentum into Michigan into a few weeks' time. Amon Law started this series back in season 14, was 8th in the point standings at the end of his rookie campaign, and then ramped up to the top 3 on the podium of the point standings championship back in season 15, and already setting to lead the points after race number 1 if he can hold on. 10 laps to go next time.
It was very competitive to start, but as these drivers have learned the tight confines around this track, they've learned that St. Pete is a menace. Speaking about the history of St. Petersburg, we talked about right towards the top end of the broadcast, became a part of the IndyCar schedule starting in 2005, which in fact was the first ever road course race in the history of the Indy Racing League, starting from 1996, and then stayed with the calendar when reunification happened in 2008. It's been part of the schedule ever since, and it is a beloved track by many a fan of American open wheel racing. But fascinatingly enough, in the years from 1985 up until 1990, Trans Am actually ran on a kind of like a long-lost cousin of this track. It was in the same vicinity here in St. Petersburg. It wasn't the exact layout by any means, but it was a very interesting track, one that was a bit of a menace as well. Unfortunately, I believe in one of those runnings there was a accident that took a driver's life. But it is a very tough racetrack to nail down, this one that does have history dating back to the 80s. They even tried bringing the event to an area not too far away here around Tropicana Field, Tropicana Park, right there in the St. Pete area. That event only ran for 2 years in 1996 and 1997, also hosted Trans Am events, and then they finally brought it back towards the waterfront come time for 2003 when Champ Car was looking to put together its first season schedule. But what a area this is to host a motor race, as much as it may be a very challenging racetrack, as we have discussed at length throughout the show, it is also absolutely beautiful. I want to give some love to Howie and the production truck, and notably Howie's graphics card, because I don't want to know how boiling hot that thing is. We've talked about the track temperatures. You want to fry an egg on Howie's PC right now.
Yeah, but this track looks beautiful. The graphics have looked great all night long, and a huge shout out to Howie Burroughs for bringing us the coverage and giving you the sights and sounds here from the St. Petersburg Street Circuit here in St. Petersburg, Florida. Lots of great things around the area. Of course, you have the runway at Albert Whitted Airport. That's runway 9 and 24. And then you have the Albert Whitted Park that's alongside. You've got Demons Landing Park, which has a ton of boats around it. They've got a sailing center out there. There's the Dali Museum that's right in the thick of things, so you actually can see it around this racetrack. Once you get to a certain part of it, you can see that Dali Museum. And then you can also get the Mahaffey Theater. There are a ton of great things you can find here around St. Petersburg, a city that has blossomed over the last decade or so. And obviously in the Tampa Bay area where, like you mentioned, that initial part of this St. Petersburg track was running around the Trop, the place where the Tampa Bay Rays currently play baseball in their current season. And also a fun thing about that, I guess maybe the initial start of the whole idea of street circuits that rally around a specific point of a stadium. Obviously, we're kind of used to that now. IndyCar going to Arlington and driving around the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. Formula One going around the Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, around the home of the Miami Dolphins, their NFL team, and a few other major sporting events, including the World Cup that happened just about a month or so ago. So probably the first initial idea of racing around a popular stadium that hosts a pretty popular professional sports team, but I digress on that. St. Petersburg has evolved nicely, and it's now one of the staple tracks on the American open wheel calendar. Watching this battle still for fifth, all of them within at least a second of each other, trying to be that first driver a lap down and get a top 5 at the end.
Yeah, at this point, these drivers having their eyes on some extra positions, but just having their eyes on that checkered flag. They just want to make it to the end of this race with as much of their race car left intact as they can. But a top 5 is still a top 5. And it's a multifaceted fight that we've got here currently. Got Van Gastel, who's been leaning on that push to pass a little bit more. You've got Watson running on those harder tires. You've got Kinder on the soft right up in front. I'm curious whether we can pull up the other push to pass to see exactly what these drivers are at numbers-wise here, because it's been a little while since we checked in on that. These drivers have leaned on that button just a little bit more. Yeah, Kinder definitely has an advantage there at 123 seconds left of push to pass. Watson at 43 trying to cling on to P6. Now, it's not a matter of just pressing that button to try and overtake. You also have to wonder about the fuel as well. With more power does come more fuel burning. So if these drivers can't afford to lean on that button, the fate of the end of this race for themselves is pretty much entirely out of their hands.
It is for the most part. If you've set the bed, you got to lie in it. And for all these drivers here, they've set it up. They've had that final pit stop, and so here they do have to run with what they've got, whether it be the push to pass left on their tank, which now they're getting to the final double digits of it. Again, we saw a lot of drivers very conservative at the start of this race with push to pass. Not many of them willing to press that button for the extra boost of horsepower over the course of the afternoon. But it has evolved. Now with 6 laps to go, why not burn off what you've got in the tank, even if there is still time left? Watson's still using what is now 40 seconds of his push to pass. Kinder with about 123, so much more he can carry as he's got the pace in 5th. And Pim Van Gastel with the 82 seconds left on his push to pass. As you can watch on the left side of your screen, that's all of the differences between those 3 drivers in what is now the closest line of cars we see in this final stint. Aman Lal, if you haven't seen him on the screen in a little while, he's been doing well. Still 25 seconds clear of the second place car in Rotor Neftink. Here comes Watson through 5, 6, 7, and moving off into turn number 8, trying to look to the inside for 5th.
Yeah, and keeping tucked in within that area, trying to get a move done here, not able to get it worked through the tight and twisties. Now, though, as the speeds begin to build in the back half of this racetrack, this could be where a move gets done. Doesn't go for it into turn number 10, but that's Van Gastel going off the track right behind a huge lockup. I believe he kept it out of the wall, but only just no, he did hit the wall. Look at that front wing missing. The front nose cone still intact, but unfortunately, the tail end of this fight thought the the drama was going to go on farther up the road. Unfortunately, Van Gastel going to steal the show in all the wrong ways, goes out of that fight in a cloud of smoke.
There it is, just a simple lock of the brakes. That has been the treacherous corner of this afternoon so far. How many incidents have we counted that have happened around turn number 10? Van Gastel now, the racing car to come down pit road, although he will most likely continue in this race, just not in the battle for 5th. That's continuing on. The push to pass again in favor of Sebastian Kinder, but it's James Watson applying all of the pressure inside 4 laps to go. Trying to look again into turn number 9. Turn 10 has been the trouble spot, not a place to try and attempt an inside pass, but Watson is there, trying looking for turns 13 and 14. Will there be a mistake out of Kinder or Watson? Answer is no. They cleanly go through 11 and 12. We'll see the grace of the skies for an opportunity for Watson to sling down the inside. He tries. He opens the door. Kinder denies him at the door in 14. And this will continue on, entering back to turn 1.
And you can see Watson once again on the button, but so too is Kinder, having enough push to pass to not only be able to defend, but doesn't have the grip. He locks it up big time into turn number 1, and Watson gonna take 5th just like that.
But remember, Kinder has more push to pass, 115 seconds. It's just that his tires are starting to feel the brunt of the impact. He chose the alternate compound tires for that final stint, and it may just be the costing decision that'll leave him out of a chance for the top 5 position. Still in P6 and a ways away from Pim Van Gastel. Remember, made this mistake in turn number 10. So there is still going to be plenty of opportunity for Kinder to hold on to the spot inside the final 3. Here's a replay of how Kinder got into the situation in turn 1 and how Watson made the move on by. Had the run down the front straightaway using the push to pass, using the momentum. Kinder just locking it up a little bit too wide and cooked the brakes. Watson to the inside. Thank you very much from the driver of the 39. The 2 teammates most likely to engage in one more battle before this is all said and done. Meanwhile, Amon Law, the Altena Autosport number 13, has pulled away and is looking to close this thing and bring it home. Final lap and a half here from St. Pete.
And Law looking just to complete this race, a race that has been packed with attrition. It has been messy at times. Some of these drivers will be very happy to wave a at least temporary farewell to the St. Petersburg street circuit, but there's still a lot of trouble left in the works. So in a race and a season that could be as challenging as we have seen, this could be a fantastic way for Law to start off this season in a 7-round championship, spaced apart throughout the rest of the calendar year. These drivers can chase perfection, but they need to try and keep that momentum rolling, keep with the good mind, keep with the good thoughts. A 13 gonna have real good thoughts leaving Florida as he takes a white flag.
White flag in St. Petersburg, and it's Amon Law by 26 seconds over Roden Eftink. It has been pure domination since Law took the lead on strategy, had a quicker pit stop than Julian Altena. And then when the 11 car ended up in an outside wall crash off turn 3, it was just right in the hands of this man right here, who's trying to chase for his first win in the VOR IndyCar Series since last season when he won this race back in St. Pete in the doubleheader with 18 laps on the board and in a 78-lap endurance. It's the final sector for Amon Law. Final straightaway to turn 10. It's one more mistakeless approach for the driver of the 13. He knows the gap that he has. And Amon Law for the final time through 11, 12, 13, and 14. It'll be a season-opening victory and a defending race victory for Amon Law. Takes the season opener of the Season 16 VOR IndyCar Series. Amon Law wins the BooklyDoo Grand Prix of St. Pete.
And what a drive. Talk about weathering the storm. We may be in a state that's known for hurricanes, but he has had to go through an EF5 tornado here. What a way to get the first win of the season.
Roden Eftink, after a very back-and-forth afternoon, is able to come home in second. Toby Deck in third. Coming down to turn 10 will be the last driver to finish this race on the lead lap. In a whirlwind of an effort, Kinder finishes behind Watson, who locks up the final spot in the top 5. And the lead lap cars coming around to finish it all. The rest of the field have come across to the finish as lap down machines. They are running just slowly across St. Pete. And as Toby Deck comes across the line, that will finish off the race. Amon Law, third in the championship last season. At the end of a long and grueling campaign that ended at Las Vegas, it's Amon Law that takes the points lead by a commanding margin, and his first win of season 16. Takes the W over Roden F-Tink. It is an Altena Autosport 1-2 finish, the first since that late January race in 2026 at Road America. Toby Deck ends up capping off the top 3, the only Honda in the top 5, not named James Watson, and is the final driver on the lead lap. John Christensen closes his Chevrolet into the top 4 with Watson there in the top 5. Sebastian Kinder, his teammate, was chasing him down for a while but couldn't get to him. Finishes in P6. Pim Van Gastel did get some wing damage at the end, but with all the time he had to spare between himself and Brian Fiolas, he still locked up the top 7. Fiolas back in 8th, Andres Vince back in 9th, and Luke Reed in the 8 rounds out today's top 10.
And looking through the back half of the pack, many of these drivers running into difficulties. Matthias Strauss ends up in 11th place. Dan Ensch comes across a stripe in P12. The last of the cars actually see the checkered flag. Julian Altena with that impact into the wall on his lap ends up in lucky spot P13. Adam Williams and Dylan Bittman caught up in a dramatic accident into turn number 10. Those two drivers could have had a very good shot to score the win. Unfortunately, they walk out with some of the final spots. Alexander Wetzel was really the precursor to turn number 10. Callum Ford was as well, along with Katie Pollock. Those drivers all running into difficulties as well. Classes DNFs here at the end of a dramatic opening race to kick this season off.
The first time ever we raced on the streets of St. Pete was back in the doubleheader last season, but it's the first time we ever opened a campaign at a track like this, and it's certainly delivered on very different fronts. Amon Law getting the first win of the year. We'll try to talk to some of the drivers that took us through a whirlwind of an afternoon here in southwestern Florida, and we will start with the driver who ends up in victory lane today after what was an insane range of emotions and feelings behind the wheel. Amon Law joins us now from victory lane. Amon, how can you describe the way this race just transpired? It goes from you back in 6th in qualifying, having to work your way up through the field. The leaders crash late in the first stint, and then Altena ends up in the wall after you beat him off pit road. How can you describe properly the way this afternoon felt for you?
Quite a tough one. In qualifying, I actually did a lap good enough for P2, but obviously it didn't count. So I had to start P6. And so from there, I kind of just said I'm going to go as long as possible on the primaries. I think I went longer than anyone else. And, I could really push a lot more on the reds when I did get onto them for both of those stints. Not sure what happened to the leaders. It was quite a bit unfortunate. And also Julian as well. I was looking forward to battling him. But yeah, it is what it is. I'll take it.
And with the way this race unfolded in the doubleheader last season, where you were able to take the victory and then ended up finishing 3rd in that first of the doubleheaders, did you feel a little more familiar with how to be quick here at St. Petersburg? And did it ever just feel as comfortable as it did last season?
Yeah, I do enjoy. This is one of my favorite tracks on iRacing. So I do enjoy driving this track quite a lot. So that probably helps, just to drive a little bit faster and be more consistent, I guess. But yeah, it's also important to stay clear of any incidents because it's quite easy around here.
So you started this campaign back in season 14 of the VOR IndyCar Series, and as we see it, this is the first time that you're leading the drivers' point standings after any given race, this time the season opener after leading 22. How important is that for you, understanding only a 7-race schedule, so it's not as long as it used to be before? How important for you is that to start this season on the right foot and have the championship lead going into Michigan?
Yeah, obviously it's quite early still. With there being no drop rounds, it's quite important to do the best to get the most amount of points every race. So can't really ask for much more with this start.
Well, Amon, a wonderful showing here from St. Petersburg. You survived the madness here in Florida and end up winning the season opening race of season number 16. Before we let you go, anybody you want to give a shout out to or thank for today's run?
Yeah, thanks to the team and Julian for setting up the league, and obviously it's the last season as well, so I'd like to put on a good show. I think my family are watching as well, so yeah, and thanks to you guys for putting on the broadcast.
Well, we appreciate the kind words, Amon. Congratulations on the victory here from St. Pete. You're second at this track in a row. Looking forward to seeing you and the rest of the field take on the Irish Hills of Michigan in a few weeks. Enjoy the win.
Thanks, see you.
Amon Lal, the Altena Autosport number 13, takes the victory in commanding fashion after a wild strategy race and everything in between. Rather extracurricular, if you want to describe it like that. Rotor Neftink is a driver who finishes right behind him in second, the first Altena Autosport since January of this year. Ron, you're caught up with him.
Yeah, Ronan joining us now in the broadcast booth. Welcome in, my friend. Well done on the P2, weathering the storm that we saw here on the St. Pete Street Circuit. How was it out there?
Yeah, this was a crazy race, wasn't it? Oh my god. Yeah, for me, to be honest, for me, like it was just keeping the car like out of the walls. So maybe the pace wasn't always there, but I know towards the end, I knew that just keeping good pace, I could get there if I didn't end up in the wall like all the mono guys did. And then it was looking like an amazing team result until Julian kind of binned it, didn't he?
See, I'm not going to say anything of the sorts, but it was an incident that took him out. It was looking like a pretty strong run for your team, and then drama breaking out there late.
Yeah, I haven't seen the replay yet, so I can't comment on what Julian did. But yeah, I mean, still a good team result, 1, 2, and 4. Just sad Julian couldn't finish. Yeah, but overall, still amazing team result, I think.
Yeah, fantastic way to start off the season for both yourself and the team as a whole. Yeah, I want to ask you about this race and specifically the scorching hot track temperatures throughout. All through, I think we saw temperatures in the mid to low 40s Celsius wise. It was scorching from the drop of the green through to the fall of the checkered. So how was it trying to battle a race car that was looking like it was going to snap around at every single point in time?
Yeah, at some point I didn't bother looking at the track temp anymore. It's just way too hot. But that made it challenging. Which I think apart from Toby, me, and Amon, of course, everyone was a lap down. It was just a battle of keeping the tires alive. Especially the rears were a problem for me. Just towards the second stint for me on the alternates, my tires were absolutely dead the last couple of laps. So. It was difficult out there, but we made it work apparently, so that's good.
Yeah, it worked out well for you at the end of this race. I do want to ask you about both the rest of the schedule that we have here for this season, and specifically the next race at Michigan. We've got Michigan, Kansas, Indianapolis, Barber, Richmond, Gateway. Really an interesting collective of tracks, all of which are incredibly challenging. So what are your thoughts as we go throughout the rest of this season 16 here in VOR?
I think this season our team, our strong points in our team are actually on the oval side this time, compared to the mono guys, which seem to be really fast on the road courses. But well, you have to keep it alive too, or you have to finish. First, you have to finish first or something like that. So, I think with this result and this strong result on a street course, and looking forward to the next oval, Michigan, I think that's where our team can actually shine. So I'm looking forward to those races, and then Barber in between. I mean, we can do well there. But it's still an oval heavy calendar, I think. So there's really good chances for both our teams to just. Yeah, I mean, just win this season. It's early to talk about that, of course, but I think we're holding some good cards. So definitely, yeah.
Yeah, happy about the hand that you have been dealt with heading into this season, Roden. But before we let you go and celebrate this P2 result here in this first round of the championship, we'll let you give any thank yous or shout outs.
Yeah, well, just thank you to the team, of course. Everyone did an amazing job today. You guys as well for making this amazing broadcast, and that's it. I think, yeah. Overall, I'm just happy. Still kind of recovering from this race.
Yeah, I could imagine it was very stressy and also very tiring running 78 laps around this place, but you cope with the challenge brilliantly, Roden. Thank you for joining us here in the booth, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time when the series heads up there to the rolling Irish hills of Michigan.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys.
And there we go. That was Roden, our P2 finisher. F-Tink ends up the second step on the podium. Kenneth, I'll pass the mic back off to you to have a chat with our P3 man.
And a very important day for Toby Deck, driver who finishes third. Toby, your career best finish in the VOR IndyCar Series. How special is that, given the circumstances that befell literally everyone here tonight at St. Pete?
Hello?
Yep, we've got you. You've got us?
Yes. Only a little bit at the later part.
All right, well, Toby, still a career best third place finish, your third road course start. All of them have happened here at St. Pete, but this a career milestone. First podium in your VOR IndyCar Series career. How special is that given everything that happened in this race?
Wow. Yeah, it was an insane race, of course. I'm very happy how it went, especially considering how it ended last year. Like, I needed to redeem myself, which... in my opinion, I certainly did.
And let's talk about the difficulty of this St. Pete track. You ran it in the doubleheader last year. Did it feel any different from that time around to this time around? And how treacherous would you describe St. Pete to drive with this car?
I fucking love it. St. Pete is genuinely my favorite track. I really enjoy it. It felt fun. I didn't really have that much struggle with the difficulty. The difficulty were more the people were around. There were a lot of people who just were quite a lot slower, just quite a decent bit off the pace, and I got impeded a lot, almost taken out by back markers a lot. I messed up my strategy a huge time. The rule that you need 2 alternates, I accidentally forgot to select the alternate, so I had to do an extra pit stop, which maybe not would have given me a P2, but that's if right.
So we talked about with some of the other drivers in this series, it's a short calendar, only 7 races up until the end of October. And we're going to have 2 more races on a road course, but it's going to take a few months before we get there. So how would you describe how you feel about attacking the other races on the schedule so far, especially the ovals that we'll have in the next 3 from Michigan, Kansas, and Indianapolis?
Wow. Michigan and Indianapolis, I'm really looking forward to. Those are great fun races. I've run them a lot in just official races, just to practice. I've done a lot of practice, so I hope the rest of the season I can continue like the good results.
Well, Toby, a great finish. Podium here at St. Pete in our first race of season number 16. Before we let you go, anybody that you want to specifically give a shout out to or thank for today's run?
Well, just Pim for putting up with me for 2 hours during this race, and also all the other guys who helped me over the last few months to really try to master the IndyCar. It's been great.
Well, a fantastic finish today. Happy to see you on the podium, Toby, for the first time in your VOR IndyCar Series career, and looking forward to see you and the field take on Michigan in a few weeks.
Yes, thank you.
Toby Deck ends up as the 3rd place finisher here from St. Petersburg. We apologize for some of the swearing there and the words, but of course, that was excitement on how thrilling it was for Toby to drive this St. Petersburg track and run. I'll turn it back to you for the final thoughts before we close things out here from Southwestern Florida. A day to remember in our first feature-long event here at this street circuit, and it brought us everything and more with Maunz taking his 2nd straight victory here at this track.
You know, the adrenaline may have been pumping for those drivers in the interviews, but has been for us for the past couple of hours. What a thrilling way to get this season up and rolling. One that's going to have thrills and spills throughout. Again, talking about the calendar that we have in store throughout this season, we've got some real incredible races, but we're swapping at the tight, twisty confines of this slow and technical street circuit for the high-speed, flat-out oval action of Michigan in a few weeks' time. There is no farther apart races, both geographically and otherwise, to start off the 7-round calendar. These drivers once again going to be tested in a few weeks' time when they rock up to Michigan.
And we're only going on road courses twice this season. That includes St. Petersburg. So only one more trip to a left and right feature track at Barber Motorsports Park for a doubleheader later on in October. A couple of the broadcasts still on the way here for the Velocity Online Racing channel. The International IndyCar League happens just tomorrow at Daytona. That happens at around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, before the ICOS Euro SOF race happens at Portland on August 4th. And you go down to more IndyCar leagues in the Euro Series. The International IndyCar League returns on August 16th. Global IndyCar Challenge from Zandvoort in the Netherlands on August 17th. Of course, before we return for the second round of the VOR IndyCar Series in Season 16 as it rolls through the Irish Hills of Michigan in 3 weeks' time. We hope to see you there at 2 p.m. Eastern on August 22nd. Well, that does it for us here from beautiful St. Petersburg, Florida, where Amon Law goes back-to-back here at St. Pete and starts off Season 16 with the points championship lead as we head into Michigan International Speedway in a few weeks' time. For everybody at the VOR IndyCar Series League, for Howie Burroughs, our producer all afternoon long, and for my colleague in the booth, Ron Maunz, I'm Kenneth Bueno saying so long from Southwestern Florida. Amon Law, the winner